I ran this poll on X. What penalty should Carmelo Anthony face? For those that are not familiar, you must live under a rock. But for those that are, or for those that aren't, this is the story of the high school students, and Carmelo Anthony stabbed Austin Metcalf, killing him. And this has been pretty contentious in the media. So without going into what the story is and the finer details of actually what happened there, I asked X, what penalty should Carmelo Anthony face? 42% said the death penalty. 32.2 said life in prison. 18.7 said 25 years. 6.9 said less than 25 years. There was a total of 38,943 votes since the posting of this. I find it fascinating that nearly half is calling for the death penalty for Carmelo Anthony. Now, it's off the table. He's a minor, so he cannot receive life or the death penalty. But I did think that was particularly interesting considering the factors of the case. However, I do bring this up because I was thinking about it. I changed my mind on the death penalty. I proposed this early on. Here's what we could do. Have the death penalty. Someone is charged with a capital offense and they're duly convicted. Let's say Kamala Harris is the prosecutor. We then have, after the conviction, a secondary independent investigation of the prosecutor from a different jurisdiction under a different budget umbrella and whatever to investigate that office with full access to documents, all communications, all donations, and determine if there was any impropriety. And if there is none, then the death penalty is.
So you're proposing not just a judicial review, but also a review of how they were elected and things like that?
No. So let's say John Smith is accused of killing a child.
Okay.
Capital offense. Kamala Harris is the prosecutor.
Got it.
She says, I want the death penalty for this man for killing a child.
Got it.
She gets a conviction. A secondary independent investigatory body will then launch an investigation of the prosecution and the police work. They'll have full right to access all documents.
Okay.
In the event documents are destroyed, obfuscated, or in the event documents are obfuscated, destroyed, evidence from their case is removed, the death penalty is removed from the table.
Wasn't that basically
in the event that we uncover intentional deception, then those individuals will also be will be charged with a capital offense. So a prosecutor that intentionally seeks the death penalty for an individual, knowing the individual is either innocent or withholds exculpatory evidence, is now subject to a capital offense charge themselves, and they could too face the death penalty.
Okay, withholding evidence is one thing, but how can they know that the individual is innocent? Because that would be withholding evidence. So either one of those, it's like.
In the event a prosecutor is like, I know this guy didn't do it.
But how would they know that? They'd have to have evidence that they would have to have exculpatory evidence to know that.
So right. So it's two phrasings of a similar thing.
Okay. All right.
In the event they are withholding evidence, exculpatory evidence, or then I guess the point was if they're wrongfully prosecuting the individual.
Okay.
And secondary
because
investigation.
prosecutors, even if the prosecutor feels someone's innocent but doesn't know it for sure, their duty is to go forward with the prosecution. All I'm trying to do is they need the leeway to be able to do that. But if they have concrete evidence that they're charging someone, or if they're withholding evidence that is exculpatory, yeah, I would agree. That can't be allowed.
And then would you agree that individual should face a capital offense felony and face the death penalty themselves?
I can see the basis for that.
Meaning that somebody then would have to try them?
Yep.
Okay. And then they get reviewed on their review?
Indeed they do.
Yeah.
So just
in much the same way that I feel that someone who files a false rape charge should be subject to, a legal repercussions that are similar to the charges they've alleged against somebody.
One of the unique things about the United States is you can take a case to court, and both parties have to pay their own bills. In other countries, if you want to sue someone and you lose, you have to pay their court fees, which is it's bad for poor people, right? It's really bad for poor people to do that because, you end up with big companies and stuff like that really beating the crap out of poor people. But you have a less litigious society, and one of the big problems that people, like across different lifestyles and stuff here in the U.S., they say that we're a too litigious society, and that's a part of the reason why costs are what they are. Why it's a big deal.
I do want to stress this as we're in the Carmelo Anthony story. Next week we're going to be doing a full debate on self-defense, and it's not just about Carmelo Anthony, because I understand a lot of people are like, we get it. But I really want to discuss the Ahmed Arbery case. You familiar with Ahmed Arbery and the McMichaels? So I tweeted just recently, free Travis and Gregory McMichael and William Bryan. They were wrongly convicted and are facing life in prison over the death of Ahmed Arbery, for which the court actually exonerated them. They perhaps might face a lesser charge of some sort, but not life in prison. And so I'd like to see conservatives focus on something we can positively affect. I will say, guys, I say this with as much passion as I can. David Toronto, you are wrong. He says Carmelo was not invited. He was in a place he shouldn't have been. Bad analogy that last night. I say this with utmost sincerity to all of you. Please, for the love of all that is holy, read the police report. Carmelo Anthony was friends with a member of the Memorial High School track team, whose initials are EP, who identified him to the police. Carmelo Anthony did not flee the scene. He remained at the track, and when he was approached by police, had his hands in the air saying, I was protecting myself. This is not a justification of anything he did, but I am flabbergasted, my friends, by how many people on X and on YouTube do not know the facts of the case and are calling for the death penalty for this kid. Why was he under the tent? He was friends with EP, a Memorial High School track member, who identified him to the police. They asked him to. He was there. I don't know where he was it wasn't an enclosed tent. It was a gazebo. It was thunderstorming. It had begun to rain, and it was and the police said by the time they arrived, it was torrential downpour. That's why he was under the tent. They shouldn't have fought. He shouldn't have stabbed the guy. Probably going to get manslaughter or potentially that. Shouldn't have brought a knife to a school. All of these things matter. The point is, I'm seeing a lot of people who did not read the police report advocating for the death penalty, which does not apply in this regard, nor does first-degree murder. Call for the guy to go to prison. Call him a scumbag. Call him everything you want. But I am imploring you to read the police report and stop basing your view on this off of the incorrect scuttlebutt that's going around on X. I'll leave it at that, because we don't need to reignite the whole debate on that issue. But right, we're going to do a big debate on self-defense, and these questions will likely come up next week.
Who's going to be on that?
So far, we're having Andrew Branca, the self-defense attorney. Okay. His assessment was that it's not self-defense because you cannot use a knife when you are being grabbed. There are questions about the case that have been completely omitted from the public discourse. That is, he wasn't in a private area. He wasn't trespassing. The high school students from Memorial had no authority to remove him from the tent and force him to go into the rain. Carmelo was friends with someone by the initials of EP, who was a Memorial track member. There's two verbal declarations by Carmelo Anthony. First, touch me and see what happens. He was then touched. There was an escalation of verbal altercation after that. Carmelo Anthony then said, punch me and see what happens. He was then grabbed to be removed, and that's when he stabbed Austin Metcalf. I am not saying he was right. Argue that's murder, whatever you want. My point is, all of these facts are being omitted from public discourse on social media. So Andrew Branca's, I think he made the point that self-defense may be argued in that 130-pound guy surrounded by four other dudes threatening to get physical with him, he feared for his safety. His assessment was you can't use a knife when someone's trying to remove you. But there are other questions that's not being brought up by the right in this regard, such as they're saying he was trespassing. Incorrect. They're saying he wasn't invited. Incorrect. He was friends with EP. This is in the police report. They're saying that they politely asked him to leave. This is incorrect. Okay?
The initial ask may have been polite, but certainly got beyond that.
It got beyond that. Yeah. Why was Carmelo Anthony there? The police report states because it was raining. So you have to understand then what we're dealing with is he shouldn't have brought a knife there. We all agree. Carmelo Anthony went under the tent because it was either lightly raining or about to rain. Some of the reports indicate it was heavily raining. The police stated that because of the heavy rain, they had to cover up the crime scene to prevent evidence from being washed away. These 4 individuals from Memorial told him to leave. He's friends with one of those track members. He may have said no. EP, whatever the person's name, we don't know the actual name. It's redacted, but it's EP. Is his friend, and that's why he didn't want to leave. Also, they were basically telling him to go stand in the rain. That is not to say that anything is justified, but this is all going to come up in the trial, and everything we're seeing on social media is glaring over all of these facts. Someone mentioned to me, Tim from 2020 would not call for the exoneration or the release of the McMichaels or William Bryan. And I pointed out in the court case on the for Ahmed Arbery, it was revealed they did nothing wrong. They were convicted because there was an interpretation by the jury as to whether or not in felony or misdemeanor cases, you have a right to citizens arrest people. That is, the prosecution agreed with the defense. Ahmed Arbery was a suspected burglar. The police did put out a warning to all of the residents that Ahmed Arbery was the suspect in a string of burglaries. When Ahmed Arbery was then later spotted in the neighborhood, shortly after a gun had been stolen from a vehicle, the McMichaels rushed to their vehicles, called 911, and sought to pursue. They were informed by police not to pursue. This was not a factor in their guilt, in their conviction. William Roddy Bryan saw them chasing him and started to film. He is now in prison for life, accused of being an accomplice to murder, kidnapping, and lawful imprisonment simply for filming the guy. This case is completely wrong. We didn't learn these things until the trial. They put these people in prison for life. It's a tragic story. They should not have pursued Ahmed Arbery. The police told them not to do it. But the question was not whether they were allowed to pursue. The question was, under Georgia law, do you have a right to commit a citizen's arrest if you are not a witness to the crime? As the law was construed, misdemeanors, no. Felonies, yes. But the judge instructed the jury to decide for themselves and not to interpret the law as he should have. The jury then said, we're just going to say you can't citizens arrest people unless you watch it happen. So, felony burglary suspect, police told the McMichaels, this is the guy we're looking for. Because they didn't witness the burglary, they had no right to pursue. That's why they were convicted on all counts. Those people should not be in prison anymore, and conservatives should be behind their release. Now, I understand why it's not going to happen. For the same reason people criticized Ben Shapiro and freeing Derek Chauvin, all that would do is shatter public support for Trump because people don't understand these things. But the last thing I'll say on this once again, not a minute goes by in this story that I don't see someone completely incorrect as to what happened, arguing for whatever reason. So I'm imploring all of you, just pull up the police report, read it yourself. There's I think 7 or 8 different officers. Their body camera footage all exists. It's all going to come out in the court case. And I don't know what's going to happen. I think it's likely, I think it's strong possibility of manslaughter. Plea agreement seems very likely. First degree murder may stand on felony murder charges. That is, he brought a knife to a school. You can't do that. Second degree murder, if they negotiate with the prosecution tries to lower it down in some way. But first degree murder without the felony murder rule would imply that he went to that school with the intent or to the tent with the intent to kill Austin Metcalf, which I don't think anybody could argue.
I don't think anybody's saying that was the intent. Yeah.
So people actually on X are saying that. They're saying he went there with the intent. It's first degree. He premeditated it. Some have said that the statement he gave was premeditation. We're going to have this debate on Friday, but my point is just, guys, read the police report. Read the police report, okay? Condemn the guy to prison or whatever you want, but it is rather terrifying to see,
I think it's going to come down
20,000 people calling for the death penalty. Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.